What is up, ladies and gentlemen? It's the weekly Giga Rambles. I'm John Caspian. Today we're joined by Mr. Kai Hall and John Galvin, of course. I didn't want to skip you, John.
And it's an exciting show. We're down a Mark, but gained a Kai.
That's a net gain.
It's a fair trade.
Yeah. But the important part is Kai is our champion for the other side here at Gigabytes.
Yeah.
And with the other side now being shipped to our distributors, and it will be available to be purchased here soon in the store, we wanted Kai to come on and kind of talk about the game and hype it up and kind of explain to you what is the other side, why it's different, and why you should be playing it. So
the other side, for people who are familiar with Weird's other game, Malifaux, it's set in the same world. So like kind of a quick breakdown is it's set in the early 1900s. I think it's currently 1918 because it's like exactly 100 years back or whatever.
Yeah.
So it'd be currently 1918. And the difference is that there's magic and some bad stuff happened. People open portals, and that, always ends well for people. And they found this other world on the other side of the portal called Malifaux with these resources called soul stones that people then took and amplified magic, made it better, made it like guy who could go, oh, look, I lit a candle, went, oh, look, I blew up half of a country.
Yeah.
And so now what's happened is some stuff has happened in that world, and an entity called the Burning Man has come to Earth and is corrupting things and opening portals to Malifaux. Yeah.
Does the Burning Man like to party?
The Burning Man loves to party.
Okay.
Yeah. He's really into leather and effigies.
Gotcha. Like, is there a big festival centered around him?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
It's called the Burning Man.
Interesting. All right, continue.
But different Burning Man. He does have a cult around him. Some of them kind of look like guys from Burning Man. But, spikes and chains and all that. But he also opened portals to Malifaux. And Malifaux is a world like any other, and it's a lot of water, which meant a lot of them opened up in the bottoms of the ocean and released terrible, terrible monstrosities from the depths of the ocean, because our ocean's weird enough. You put in Malifaux's oceans, it gets even weirder. And so that's kind of the basic of where they are in the story. But the other side is a large-scale game. It's an army-scale game. I'd say it's closest probably for people who play like small 40K or Age of Sigmar games or War Machine and Hordes in terms of
so how many
models.
like models would you say?
So for example, the starter boxes, which is a one commander list, you actually can play right out of the starter box, which is really cool. Those come with 9 times 3, so 28 models.
Okay.
28 models.
Now, so would you say like a 2-commander list would be about like 50 to 60-ish models then?
Yeah, that would be about
cool.
right. And a lot of that depends on what you want to play. So like Abyssinia, which is sort of like a Wakanda high-tech African faction, but set in the
Steampunk,
1918.
so
steampunk
Wakanda.
Yeah. So like they don't have hovering and gliding. Instead, they have giant walkers with machine guns mounted on them.
Yeah.
They are a very elite faction, and they have lots of titans, which are these big mechanical monstrosities. So, this is the King's Hand, one of the titans that we're borrowing David's from the King's Empire. But they have a lot of titans, a lot of high-cost units, so they might go on the lower end. Gibbering Hordes, which are those monsters from the ocean we talked about. This is their titan.
What's he called?
He's called the Alpha Crawler.
Ooh.
But they also have little lizard guys called Striped Skulkers. You
might want to turn it down a little bit.
Yeah.
And so
That's great.
So yeah, the four factions coming out are Abyssinia, which we were saying was steampunk Wakanda, the Gibbering Horde, which are the denizens of Malifaux. So they're native to Malifaux.
Yeah, and they were dumped out primarily over London. That's the main place that took place.
Okay.
But, they got into the Thames, they got into the oceans, and so now they're everywhere. But they are a aquatic faction.
Gotcha. And then we have, obviously, since it was dumped over London, Britain.
Yeah, which is called the King's Empire.
Correct.
They are your classic dudes with guns.
Yeah.
Gunline type faction. And then you have the Cult of the Burning Man, who are people who either have answered to his call or been mutated by his magic. They have a mutated rhino
That's pretty cool. I've seen the art and the sculpt for that, and it's amazing. I gotta go take care of this guy, but you keep talking.
They decided to bring a delivery for John. So those are the 4 factions. The gibbering, each faction has a unique twist to it. So, for example, the gibbering hordes, they actually, when a unit dies, they get to bring it back the next turn by spending a resource called tactics tokens. Okay. Now they don't bring it back at full strength. But like they get to keep coming back. They're unstoppable. They also get tide pools, which are terrain markers they can place, which you can see here. Pretty high quality little cardboard markers, and those come in the box. So they get to use those. Things care about terrain. They can turn those into hazardous terrain and stuff like that. The King's Empire, they are just dudes with guns, and they're really good at it. They can hand out pin tokens, which slow people down as they come in. They can shoot after a charge type attack, and they can shoot while engaged in melee. So they just all their faction does is they get better at shooting. Then you have Abyssinia, which is that high-tech Wakanda faction, the more elite faction. They have a lot of card draw, which I guess this is a good time to talk about how the other side doesn't use dice. It actually uses a deck of 54 playing cards. Mm-hmm. So this is lighting is bad on that. So you can see it's a normal deck of playing cards, 51 through 13 of 4 suits, red and black Joker. So you have a hand of cards that you can use to actually change and manipulate duels, which is how you attack and defend yourself. So they have a lot of card draw, so they get lots of cards in their hand. And they also have a lot of stuff to help them play the long game. They can pass an activation and not have the game end and stuff like that. Okay, and then lastly, you have the cult.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Burning Man.
Lastly, we have the Cult of the Burning Man, which have these portals, which make them really tricky movement-wise, because you kind of have to calculate a lot of different vectors they could come out from.
Interesting, Burning Man. That's so cool. So, 4 factions. Now, it just released recently. What's inside like a starter set, basically?
So, a starter set comes with a commander. It comes with, enough script, which is it's points. You know, it's we all have fancy names for points in every game now, right. But it has enough points to make that one commander list work. Okay. They all come with 2 of one unit and then a 3rd unit that's unique.
Okay. Now, how does building an army work? So everything's based around the commander, right?
Yeah, so everything's based around your commander. So, for example, if you pick a commander, it will have a value on the card of how much script it gives you. So you would say, sit down with your opponent. I'm like, hey, John, are we going to play a 1 commander game or a 2 commander game? We decide we're going to play 1 commander. We both pick our commanders. My commander gives me 25 script. Yours maybe gives you a little less because it's more powerful.
Okay.
And then you just build with that. You can buy units and you can buy assets. Assets are really important because they give you special abilities for your commanders, but also commanders have 1 wound just like every other model in the game.
Huh.
And assets are how you prevent that damage or keeping them near other units so they can pass off damage as a commander.
Interesting. Okay. Now, what is the special thing about the resource in this? I remember reading it. Basically, in some games you have morale, and this one you have kind of heroism. What's that all about?
Yeah, so this is a good time to show one of the cards.
Yes.
So earlier we talked about that King's Hand. So
very cool. Yep.
Yeah, you can't quite read it, but on the back he has what's called a glory side. So you can see the back here.
Nice.
It's a little different. It doesn't have the art on it. And what happens is every faction has a unique way to go to glory. So the King's Hand is part of the King's Empire, and theirs is if they kill a enemy fire team with a gun or a melee action, they flip to glory. So they like to kill stuff. They're a very killing-focused faction. Whereas the Gibbering Hordes actually eat their own models. They have to eat a fire team. They sacrifice a fire team within a certain range and flip to glory. the cult has to get these negative tokens called shaken tokens. Essentially, they go more and more crazy until their mind breaks and they go to glory. And Abyssinia has to beat their opponent by a certain margin value. So they can't just win, they have to win by a certain amount to go to glory.
Interesting. Okay.
And your stats get better.
Over morale, basically.
Yeah. You don't break. There is no break or leadership type system in the game. It's all about managing how your units go to glory, because a lot of them get big stat upgrades, or they'll get, a new trigger or even a new ability or action, often very powerful. One unit gets the ability to just make a new objective marker when they're in glory. So they can just be like, oh, wow. You know how you thought we were fighting over 4 objectives? Now we're fighting over 5.
Interesting. Okay, so that plays into the big difference between all the factions.
Yeah, each faction has those unique abilities we talked about earlier, but also a unique way to go to glory, which makes a big difference.
Right, so like you might want to play one way to get yourself to glory, or you might want to prevent your opponent from, getting theirs. So if I were Abyssinia and I had to beat them by a certain margin, how would I prevent a Burning Man faction from getting more glory?
So certain factions, you can interact with it a little more. So one way to do it with Cult of the Burning Man is to make them use their shaken tokens, or a lot of times they'll have guys who give out shaken tokens, and you want to target them. So if they have a commander who's giving out 2 shaken tokens a turn, that's the guy who's slowly flipping them to glory, and that's really common for them. They have commanders who give out shaken tokens.
Okay.
But if you see a unit
like during a game, what are some of the ways like you play missions? Like I know in 40K you have your traditional certain like mission list and everything, but what are some of the ways that you fight? Obviously, you can kill each other in the face, which is a traditional kind of way of going about it. But are there some unique missions or ways that you play objectives and whatnot?
Yeah, so in the core book, there's 4 different objectives, one for each suit. So you randomly flip at the start of the game before you build your list.
Okay.
So you know what your objective is.
Interesting.
And then, all right, I think John's coming in through one of the side doors. And then you build your list. So one of them, for example, is Pitched Assault, which has 2 objectives in the middle, and you get points for killing stuff, but also for claiming the objectives. There's one that's Set Traps, which is where you set objectives on the other side of the board, on your opponent's side of the board, and then you get points for both having them on your side of the board, but also disabling the ones that your opponent puts on yours. They also, Weird puts out a magazine every 2 months called Chronicles, and they have put some, I think they put 2 new scenarios out in recent months.
Interesting. So, when you're comparing this to something like 40K, for you, what are some of the big differences for you personally when you're thinking, oh, like, I'm wanting to play this versus 40K, War Machine and Hordes, whatever. What are some of the biggest differences between those other big systems?
So, honestly, one of the things that, so I kickstarted the game quite a while ago. It took them a while to get it delivered, but, that's how minis games are. I kickstarted it because I like the system of cards. With dice, we've all had those games where we roll nothing but 1s, and we've all had those games where we roll nothing but 6s, and it doesn't feel like a real game. Okay. Cards both limit how bad your luck can get or how good your opponent's luck can get, but by having a hand of cards, when I really need something to succeed, I can pump resources into it and make sure it succeeds. So it just has always felt a little more strategic on that end of things. Then I also like the glory system. For people who play Shadespire, that's not going to be a terribly new idea for them. There's also a stratagem system where you have these one-use effects that you can use through another resource called tactics tokens that you generate. So that's really cool. But then the thing that really sold me, I was excited to get the game and play it, but the thing that sold me and made me want to be a champion for the game at the store was that a lot of the stuff is really consumer friendly, and I think that's really cool. So those starters we talked about, I think are MSRP for around 100 to 115, and that's half an army. Wow. And you can play at that size. One commander games are fun. That's mostly what I've been playing with my friends so far.
Okay.
It comes with, pre-assembled all you gotta do is slap them on bases. It comes with those markers we showed you.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it comes with objective markers.
Nice card stock.
Yeah, they're good cardboard quality. But then the thing that like sold me was, so there's these units called Motor Scouts, which are one of my favorite little units. They're these guys
on
little.
So cute.
Yeah, they got a little machine gun
on bicycles.
And they have they're like one of those little initial pedal bikes, and they have a cool ability. I forget the full name of it, but something like my Velocipede is a resounding success. You can buy your own for only £10, which is like a funny one. But it means you can summon another one. Well, in most games, I feel like they're going to make you buy like 6 of those, right? Or they're going to sell you a pack of 6 for like $100 or whatever.
Yeah.
In this, it comes with a little token with the art, if I can orient it correctly. So that token is for when you summon one. So it's in the box. You get 4 of them. So like, if I buy one and all I want to do is run one and summon a bunch of new ones, I never have to buy another one if I don't want to. I'm a completionist and I like models on the table, so I'm going to do it because my wife hates me. Yeah, but you're not forced to, which is nice. It really feels like they have taken a approach to treating it like a game, and I think that's really cool.
So how does the basic combat work? So you mentioned cards before. I haven't personally played Malifaux. So for those who haven't played Malifaux, how does that fighting system work with the cards?
So let's use the King Scout as an example.
Yes.
So we're gonna hold the King Scout up here for everyone to see. Yep. And so you see on the top or the middle of the card, you have those 4 stats. Kai, can you go over those stats for us?
So the first one's speed, which is just how far you move. Mm-hmm. Then you have defense, which is if I get attacked, I'm going to flip a card. So I flip a card, and I flipped a 12. So my defense is a 15. It's also got a tome, which could maybe matter for other abilities. Someone is shooting at me, and they're shooting at me with a stat of 5. They flip a card. They got a 4 of crows. And so they're on a total of 10. So 10 to 15, I have a higher number. I'm winning right now.
Yeah.
The attacker is going to have an opportunity to cheat from their hand. So like if they had a hand and they go, oh look, I have a 12, I'm going to play it. Have an 18, I'm beating you. And then John, as the defender, would have a chance to cheat. Well, his defense is kind of low, so he probably can't get up high enough to beat me.
Yeah, unless I have a Joker, right? Do Jokers always?
So the red Joker is a 14. So in this case, I got up high enough, 18 to.
Oh
to
yeah,
beat 14
so I can't even.
Yeah.
So
but there is a stratagem, for example.
You flip a card, but then the one that you cheat from your hand overrides that one.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't do it. It just overrides. Cool. And what Kai talked about before is that the deck of cards has suits to it, and it's not your normal like ace, diamonds, clubs, spades. It is masks, tomes, crows,
and
rams. Now, on your stat card, you can have additional abilities triggered by having a suit with it. So
that's cool.
So the King's Hand has like one of my favorite triggers, which he has in Glory. He has a big old kick he can do, and he has one that's called Kick to the Groin on a ram. So the idea is, he aims for the soft spots and he gets piercing, which means he has a chance to do higher damage.
Yeah, and so what that means is when you flip your attack card over, if it has the ram suit to it, you can use that special ability. Mm-hmm. Or, like we were saying before, if you have a card, it could even be lower than the one you flipped, but it would be high enough and has the suit with it. Mm-hmm. You can cheat that then to trigger that extra ability.
Interesting.
So it's a really cool gameplay. And it gives you a whole wealth of options, too. It's a lot of tactical choices. Do you take always the higher number? Or do you want that suit so you can accomplish something specific? But, hey, your opponent's defense might be able to beat it at that point if he cheats, too.
Especially since attacker always cheats first in this, which is a big difference. I've got to demo to a lot of Malifaux players, and they're like, oh, man, that threw me for a tizzy because it's a small difference between Malifaux and the other side. But it means there's sort of an advantage to the defender.
Yeah.
I know the number I have to beat. So as the attacker, you might be like, oh, I could go really high but not get my trigger, or go not as high and get my trigger, and there's a lot of decision-making there. Yep. But it's pretty quick decision-making because, it's do I want to or don't I want to.
Yep.
Right. What's the maximum potential number that you could get?
So, gosh bless, I'm trying to think.
Do Kings count for more than a 12?
Yeah, so 13 is the maximum in the deck, other than the Red Joker, which is a 14.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And it also has every suit, so it's like the best card. It also means your opponent can't cheat. It's sort of like fate going in your favor. There's also the opposite, which is the Black Joker, which is a 0, has no suit, and you can't cheat. So it's pretty bad. There's also stratagem. We talked about those special one-use effects that says I count as a 15 and every suit. So it can be like kind of this trump card.
Wait. Sorry, we have an interloper in chat. Aaron, what do you know about the other side? Come on.
Oh, yeah. Aaron's in chat who was one of the lead designers, or was the lead designer on the other side, did a lot of work with it. So
take his word as gospel when it comes to the other side.
Yeah, whatever he says overrules what I say, clearly.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Aaron.
But yeah, so Aaron was saying that the highest a single stack can go is 10, and the highest you can flip is a 14. So
yeah.
Altogether, 24. Yeah,
and if you use that one stratagem, you could get a 25, which is
At that point, it seems like overkill.
Yeah, once you're at 25, it's like, okay, I'm succeeding. I don't care what you say.
Now, is there a difference in like? So let's say I beat you by 10 versus beat you by 8. Is there any difference there, or is it just I win or you lose?
There is. So remember we talked about those triggers on suits? There's also triggers on what's called margins, which is how much I beat you by. And every unit in the game has a special margin trigger called Powerful Attack. For every 5 I beat you by, I get to add 1 whole strength to my attack.
Wow.
Which means like if I beat you by 10, I was strength 4 and now I'm jumping up to strength 6, which is big because most strengths are somewhere between 2 and 4. You have outliers on the high end, but like I can't even think of anything besides like a couple units that go past strength 5.
Yeah.
So, big difference.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
That together in terms of units, let's say you're playing a battle, how many units do you have to deal with at any given time on the table?
So, one of the cool things is the game uses alternating activations. So, when I go to do my turn, I'm only dealing with 1 unit. It's actually one of the reasons like I can get my wife into the game. She gets tired of like, let me sit here and watch my opponent do whatever they're going to do for 35 minutes.
Yeah,
right.
The other cool thing that makes the game move quickly is these movement trays. So this is a fire team. There's 3 of these guys in a unit. In this specific unit, there might be different numbers, but that base is a part of the game.
Yeah.
So them being a fire team matters. So even though I might have 60 dudes, I might only have like 15 actual bases to move around, which makes it quick.
Yeah. And it's so like I really love the fire team bases. It harkens back to old Warhammer Fantasy battles in a sense.
Yeah.
Because your units are that block. And obviously, as you take wounds, you take guys off of the fire team, and it becomes less effective, right?
Yeah, and the other thing is, so because you're flipping cards, which just does take a little more time than rolling dice. Like, if you can't be like, oh, let me just flip 15 cards. Like, that's going to take you a while. Each fire team is an action, so a unit only gets 3 actions, rather than like. If they have 3 fire teams. If they've lost fire team, they have less. If their unit only has 2 fire teams or 1 fire team even in the base unit, they only get 1 or 2. But it just makes things move a little quicker and a little smoother. But I would say on average, unit-wise, you're probably only dealing with 5 to 10 for a 2-commander game and less than that for 1 commander game.
And so let's talk about that. Fire teams can join together to make a unit, correct?
Yeah, so when you buy it, you get the unit, and it tells you at the bottom of the card. I don't know that we'll be able to like see it close enough
Should be able to
make a difference. We're gonna try, but there we go. You can kind of read that, but it says all the base sizes on it. So it says that the Royal Rifle Corps, for example, are 330 millimeters on a fire team. So it tells you all the base sizes in case something was missing, or you're like, I don't think these things go on these giant 50 mil bases. And then it tells you squad 3, which means there are 3 fire teams in the squad.
Gotcha.
So it tells you exactly how it works.
And so the nomenclature is squad over unit, and then fire team, and then models, correct?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So And when you purchase the rifle core costs 9 soul stones. So that means you get
9
everything.
script.
9 script.
Yeah, you got to get the terminology.
No, nomenclature is really important. So it costs 9 script to play the whole squad, correct? It's buying the squad, not the units.
Yeah.
Or not the fire teams.
Not the fire team. Yeah. You buy the whole unit. And so, like, the Royal Rifle Corps, you got to buy all 3 of them for 9 script, and then that's your unit. They all activate together. They have to deal with some coherency. Yeah. It's really simple. It's just 8 inches of everything, so that's pretty lenient and pretty easy to not break on accident.
Yeah, well, that's great.
Now, you mentioned they're pre-assembled, right? So I don't have to do any assembly of the models?
Yeah, so the models come as is, pre-assembled, plastic, out of the box, ready to go. Now, as a hobbyist myself, there's always a little something extra that you can do. I know, especially on the bigger models, like the Titans, like on the Alpha Crawler, the one for the Gibbering Horde, you have additional models that can crawl on him.
For anyone who didn't see earlier, this is that guy.
And once again, you can glue those additional models on him to kind of make him like he's being poked and prodded in a battle if you wanted to. And then there's also, with it, since it's pre-assembled things, if you are a particularly finicky model builder, you can gap fill. Like so there'll be a little bit of gappage just because of the plastic and the process.
And usually only on the bigger models. All my small, I'm much more of a gamer.
Yeah.
I like painting, I enjoy it, but like I want to paint the tabletop standards and move on. But I have like had to break these apart for various reasons. And if you stick them in the freezer overnight and then wake up I mean, with the weather we've had in Georgia, you could probably just leave them outside on the porch overnight and then break them off in the morning.
Yeah. And so everything's together, ready to go. But as a hobbyist, you can always take it to an extra step if you wanted to. But you can also be a complete tabletop gamer and just say, hey, they're already assembled. They can already just automatically plop into their fire teams. I'm going to leave it as is and just play this way.
Yeah. Which is cool because I've had so many times where I've like came into a store, looked over at the wall for whatever game I was playing at the time. My wife likes to go in cycles.
Yeah.
So like I'll eventually make my way back to some game I started with when I was 12.
Yeah.
And then work my way through it again. But like if you play 40K, for example, which I love 40K and I love all minis games really. I have a whole shelf of them.
Yeah.
But if I come in, I'm like, oh, let me go look. I know Orcs just came out. Let me go look. Ooh, cool, a new kit that I don't have. Well, I can't really play with it that night because assembly takes me a minute.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not a quick assembler. And, oh, did I bring my tools? Oh, I forgot super glue. Let me see if they have super glue. Here, it's like, okay.
Or if you're a hobbyist, the whole sub-assembly process, too.
Oh, yeah.
Especially with those, like, Games Workshop makes beautiful models, but a lot of times they're very complicated. And me as a painter need to paint it in pieces.
Yeah.
So it'll take me even longer to get it to the table.
Oh, yeah. And so I love that, like, if I showed up once TOS is on the shelves, I can show up and be like, oh, cool, you guys got this in? Let me just grab it, super glue or blue tack, which I'm keeping in my kit for myself. Just blue tack it to the bases. Done. I'm playing with it in 10 minutes.
Yeah. If that, really. So
on a bad day.
Yeah. And so I like the playability and the like gratification, the immediate gratification you get just by being able to pick up something and ready to play that day. I think that's really important, especially for like a game launch. Speaking of game launches, we had Keyforge yesterday, and that's another game that I really appreciate because once again, you crack open the box and you are ready to go.
Yeah,
you know, it's pre-assembled decks.
It's pre-assembled decks. Yeah, and like I picked up Keyforge myself because I played too many games. You can just ask my wife, and like it's kind of a similar feel. Like I looked at it and the rules were like a page front and back, and I was like, cool. Speaking of, TOS's rules are free online. So if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I kind of want to check it out, I would still recommend picking up the rule book because the rules, I think, are like 32 pages.
Yeah.
Okay. And the rule book is almost 300 pages. So that tells you how much of it in there is really high-quality stories, background.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't call it fluff anymore. I read a thing on Twitter about how like that's disrespectful to the writers and stuff.
Fluff.
Yeah, fluff. But it's hard to break the habit.
Yeah.
But yeah, lore, background, stories. you get to read about the best character, which is a pack of telepathic sharks.
Yeah.
There's a story from their perspective. Yeah, that's one of the Gibbering Hordes commanders is a pack of 3 telepathic sharks.
Deepest, bluest. Their heads are like sharks' fins.
Yeah.
That is cool.
So, yeah, it's getting all that background and also seeing all the beautiful artwork that they put into it. Like, you'll see it on the cards and on the character art and, like, even the decks that you're flipping over. But there's been so much production that was put into the other side, especially making this world feel alive and chaotic and crazy. Like, I, for one, don't want to exist in the other side's world.
Oh, gosh, no. Although it is a little less dark than Malifaux, I will say that. I often say Malifaux is the story of bad people doing bad things, and the other side is more a story of a bad world doing bad things and good people standing up to it. So it's very pulpy, sort of like, you know...
It does have a very, like, radio drama feel to it.
Yeah.
And so, like...
like War of the Worlds and all that?
Yeah, it's very close to that because, once again, you can look at the... You can declare the human factions as the protagonists. So, like, you know, in quotations, right? Like the King's Empire and Abyssinia, you know, they are beset on all sides by fantastical creatures and crazy cults. But it's still filled with this world of adventure because there's so much that's not known, right? Like, you know, and there's... You know, like, you might clear out London of the Gibbering Horde, but the Cult of the Burning Man is still there.
Yeah.
Or... hey, maybe we need to go to, like, Madagascar to find a solution to this. Like, it has all these, like, kind of great, like, Indiana Jones or, like, radio drama, like, characters and feel to it.
Yeah, so. And, like, we already know they teased at the back of the first book 2 new factions that we'll be getting at some point. So, like, that's the 3 Kingdoms and Kimon.
Yeah, and so, like, the 3 Kingdoms is obviously drawing from China, correct?
It's China, Vietnam, and Japan. So instead of those 3 constantly being at war... because of all the other stuff that has been going on in this world, they actually band together to throw off the Guild, which is this sort of worldwide tyrannical government that's going on.
Gotcha.
The Kimon we don't know a whole lot about, but there's a dude with a giant scroll case and demons crawling out of it, so...
hell yeah.
It's probably a good guy, right?
Yeah, probably a good guy, right?
All about perspective,
I don't know
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Depends on how you look at it. But yeah, so like that's really important too, especially to hear from people who are much more into the game than I am. The fact that there is support coming. There's more factions coming out. Yeah. And also, once again, the Gibbering Horde scratches that itch for me for flavor of an army. Like, I love having the mostly monstrous creatures running around the board. But that 3 Kingdoms, it's got that, you know, the whole, like, Asian aesthetic to it, especially like you know, like the feudal era in Japan. The is it now that you said 3 kingdoms, I can't remember. Is it 5 kingdoms in China or is it but basically the kingdoms era in China plus Vietnam plus their history all rolled into one. So if that's your particular aesthetic that you like, that's something to look forward to and be like, okay, cool, there's a faction coming out for me.
Yeah. And the really cool thing is, even if you play, for example, Gibbering Hordes through the Envoy system, which is sort of like Allies in 40K, which I don't even know if they still do, but they did do at some point. It's a much more limited system, but there's dual faction commanders. So
tell me about my boy.
Yeah, Hormatangi, who's a sort of Godzilla-looking guy.
So Hormatangi is coming out with the first wave, correct?
No.
Shortly after.
He'll be in book 1. He'll be in the first wave.
Okay, cool.
But he's not going to be the stuff coming out in a couple weeks.
Yeah, take Godzilla and mix him with a Eastern Dragon.
Yeah,
and Pacific Rim him up a little bit.
Yeah,
and that's him.
Nice. But he is both Gibbering Hordes because he's from Malifaux. He's from the oceans of Malifaux. But he came over a long, long time ago and was like, lost a bunch of his power, so he made a deal with the Burning Man to get some of his power back. So he's working for both factions, so he can hire both. So, like, if you bring him into Gibbering Hordes, you can bring a couple of cult guys along to support your army. So even if, say, John's like, oh man, that is my jam, Gibbering Hordes 100% of the way, he could say, oh, I want to try out some cult guys and just buy Hormatangi and bring them in. So there's a little mix and match and reason to be excited for future factions because, you know, they might give you access to something new.
Dual commanders. So yeah, like there might be a 3 Kingdoms and a like King's Empire, right?
Yeah.
Like, like that's something that's possible where like an envoy from either faction joins the other, and giving you the ability to cross over. So I like that system a lot, and it's something that Malifaux does really strongly, is having those dual faction characters.
Yeah.
And I believe the third edition is moving over to kind of what 40K's moved to, which is keywords, right?
Yeah. So, but I think one of the things is like ally systems can worry people. The thing is, you can only bring in one envoy, and for most factions, you have to have a dual faction commander. So you can't just be like, oh, let me bring the guns of King's Empire and the melee focus of Gibbering Hordes together. You actually have to have
the envoy.
Yeah. And if they can't envoy, then you just never have to worry about it.
Yeah. So that's a really neat system that you have. So it lets you kind of play with a variety of models because, I mean, to be honest, all these models are really cool, and the fact that you can kind of mix and match them together is a really great tool to it. So,
so Kai, what are some of the events and stuff that you're going to be doing for the other side as our champion?
So obviously, I want to do some tournaments because tournaments are, I think, one of the greatest ways to get together and like just play a couple games in one day, and weekends just people are a little more free. But one of the cool things I'm going to be doing is narrative map leagues. So where I'm going to be coming up with an area that people will be fighting over, as well as some kind of extra objective. So the plans for the first one is that people are going to be in Egypt, and they're going to be fighting for control of these various relics that have been powered up by Burning Man coming over. So essentially, like all these ancient Egyptian relics that people are like, oh, it's just like some weird obsidian staff with a scarab on the top. It's nothing, and like now it can, plague people or whatever. And so the factions are fighting for control of that, either to keep it out of the hands of enemies, use it for themselves. But yeah, I talked to the folks who are in the game, and they really want some narrative leagues. So I'm gonna give the people what they want.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Especially for getting a new game started, because a lot of people who are getting into this game maybe don't want to jump straight into competitive. They want some time to kind of experience the world, get used to the game and the models, and kind of build that up slowly before they're like, yeah, let's start defining the meta, So like that's absolutely great to see, and especially if you keep that story going and you let people kind of take part and experience the world that way, it's really strong. Now. So obviously for like any sort of narrative, like you'll have your own rules for army composition, things like that. Is there a standard for tournaments in terms of like how you build stuff? Is it similar to Malifaux, or is it similar to like 40K?
So we haven't gotten at least last I checked, we haven't gotten any organized play document yet. I'm sure that we'll get one because, they've got a really great one for Malifaux. So I'm sure they're going to put one out. But we don't have it yet. So we're gonna have to kind of wait and see for that.
Yeah. Now, would you, as someone who would be running a tournament and things like that, would you prefer to see something like where you come in with a pre-built list, or you come in choosing just a faction?
So, I think the system that I'll most likely use is something where you kind of bring a pool of stuff that you can hire from, just because I think part of the joy of the game is building to the scenario, and I want to keep that around, but I don't want it to be an advantage of, oh, I've spent $2,000 on this game, I'm going to win because I have more options than you do. Right. But, to begin with, I think we'll probably do a lot of, like, fixed list stuff just while people slowly grow.
Yeah, but basically, like, including a sideboard, more or less.
Yeah, kind of something like that. Or maybe, we'll see how that works. Maybe sort of something like a War Machine Hordes type, bring two lists, choose one to play kind of thing.
I have to wonder if that's like a bigger trend going forward in games. Like Kill Team is big about bringing a match play roster. So if the other side does the same thing, I love that because I like to bring a box of minis and then figure it out later,
Yeah, I think that is a direction, like I said, I play a lot of minis games, and I think that is a direction they're going in, and it'd be smart for the other side to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Just because, like, so often I feel like, the days of lugging around 6 bags to get all your stuff into the store is just gone. Like, that's just not something people want to do. And they also don't like fixed lists. Like, people like
a little bit of flexibility.
A little bit of flexibility. I mean, even in War Machine and Hordes, don't they have sideboard types?
They actually moved away from that.
They moved away.
Yeah,
but they had it at one point. They have the two lists.
Two list systems is good.
That gives you some flexibility.
Yep. So yeah, there's a lot of ways that you can. I think having the flexibility, especially to adjust to a wide range of scenarios, is really strong. Especially if there's going to be like a huge difference between capture the points or even like kill team or like kill points or something to be said for having something like in the center of the map versus like spread out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like set traps, for example, bringing something that's fast that can get to my opponent's side of the board, but I also have to bring things that can play linebacker, that can protect my side of the board. You can't just bring one or the other, you need to bring both. But those super fast units might not be helpful in pitched assault where they're fragile but quick. Like, I don't want them dying, so...
Now, do you get to see your opponent's list, or you both choose based on just the scenario?
You get to know your opponent's faction. Which does tell you a lot, because if John says he's playing Cult of the Burning Man, I know the 3 commanders he can choose from, I know the units he can choose from, I know vaguely what they're trying to do, and I can work to counter that a little bit.
Yeah, and so with that, it gives you a little bit of insight. But yeah, so like predominantly you'll be like, all right, cool. What's good versus that faction that I have, and also what's good with the scenario that I'm playing. So it lets you kind of build a mix of both of those. So it's pretty strong. It's pretty cool. And with that, so did you talk about like what's the max size table that you're playing on?
So one commander games are played on a 4x4, which is nice because it's pretty common. But then 2 commanders are played on a 4x6, which is nice for us here at Gigabytes because we have access to a lot of 6x4 tables. And I would say 6x4 is about as big as you're going to get unless you want to do a crazy like Apocalypse style game and be like, all right, I'm bringing all the commanders for King's Empire and Abyssinia, and I'm building like 150 script worth of stuff versus all the stuff for cults and Gibbering Hordes and 150 worth of script of that. Then you might want to go to like a 6x8 just to fit it all.
And so with that, we have 4x4s, we have 6x4s here at Gigabytes. What's the terrain like?
Terrain is pretty light, and it's actually one of my favorite. Like, it's weird for me to say terrain's my favorite system in the game, but in a way it is because the way it works is pretty simple. Like cover, if it's in the way and it's blocking, it provides cover.
Cool. It's
really easy. Like, it's not like, okay, well, is this tall and this is this tall? Yeah. The only exception is Titans are ignored by low terrain. So if you have a wall, the Titan can't crouch behind the wall and get a benefit. Yeah. But if you have a tall building, they can hide behind the tall building.
Okay.
But terrain is pretty light. I would say, like, I find myself pulling from the fantasy and historical sections a lot.
Yeah.
The historical is nice because, it is set in 1918. So any kind of World War I, World War II type terrain.
Yeah, like our bolt action stuff. It's not quite accurate, but it's like close enough.
Yeah. The scale's off a little bit, but it can kind of feel cool when like the Titan is towering over this 2-story Victorian mansion.
Yeah, what's the scale compared to?
32 millimeter.
Yeah, so it's about the same as War Machine Hordes, a little bit bigger than 40K.
Which is 28. I think.
Yeah, 28 for 40K. So it's a good scale. Everything looks to be relatively in scale. Obviously, the Titans in the book are shown to be monstrous things.
Yeah, but there's like one. So like playability is a big thing. All the things fit on their bases, which is nice.
Yeah,
that was sort of a running joke with Malifaux was like, look at this 40 millimeter thing on a 30 millimeter base.
Yeah.
But everything fits pretty nicely on its base. So that has led to some small, like, one of the Titans has a small scaling issue where the pilots look a little bit wonky. But it's only when you, like, actually hold something up to compare it. But everything's, like, the Titans are a little off. But I think that's just because, like, you got to.
Yeah.
Unless you're like, oh, here's this massive, this tall kind of thing.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it looks pretty cool. And in terms of like terrain and all that, like I know the Gibbering Horde has tide pools, and so they kind of bring their own terrain to the battlefield, right? That's like one of their special rules.
Yes.
And so each army more or less has like a special rule to itself, or like a special play mechanic that the other factions don't get, which is really it's really a great way to like apply or create diversity even at the get-go, right? You know, like everything's not just a reskin. Not everyone has the same options. Things are kind of wildly different. Yeah. And a lot of that is either through the army-wide special rule in itself, or the gameplay of the actual characters.
And the glory mechanics. So like Gibbering Hordes doesn't have access to a lot of range, but when they get into glory, some of their units get a short range attack. Yeah. So that might be like, again, they have one ranged unit that I can think of off the top of my head. Barb crawlers, which are these little frog little dudes who spit out barbs. But it's nice because there's a decent enough amount of units to give you diversity without like, sometimes when you sit down for a new game, like I know when I got back into War Machine and Hordes, there's a little bit of this where I was like, holy bejeebus, there's like 100 units for me to choose from. How do I start? Whereas this is pretty...
Yeah, it's a small start. I mean, it's the start of a new game, right?
Yeah.
There's enough models and there's enough units and types to be diverse and interesting to play as, but it also is small enough for anyone who wants to get into the game to easily grasp the options and choose their play style.
Especially with those starter sets. Yeah. They're really worth the money.
I mean, obviously they're going to add more units to each of the armies, so you don't have to worry about that too much. But it is one of those things where it'll be slow, progressive, and like you can keep track of it. They're also going to be adding new armies in there. So it's another, to me, that's another great way to keep armies small in themselves. Like the overall units is like, okay, cool. Maybe this quarter we're going to add to the existing armies, and the next one we're going to add some new ones in. Yeah. And let those armies, the new ones, have some crossover elements. So once again, it adds a little bit to the older armies, but still builds up a new one in itself. I love these tide pools. They're really cool. I'm not sure if Kai showed them.
Yeah, I showed them off a little bit earlier. They're a nice thick cardboard.
Yeah,
which is nice because they're pretty sturdy.
Yeah, and I really love the movement tray system. Even without magnetizing them, they fit in there well. They're snug, and you can move them around on the board with little issue. So
yeah, I think for me the big thing that I love about the game is how quick it is to play.
Yeah,
like especially for being an army-sized game, just going, oh hey look. Turn happen like this, and things move pretty quickly. I think the longest thing for people I've demoed to is just getting used to the units and like, okay, what are these abilities? When do I want to? It's the tactical decisions that take them long, which is nice.
Yeah,
I know. I showed Mark, and he played a demo game against my wife, and after like the first turn, they just played a full game on their own without me, like other than like a couple questions.
Yeah, that's great.
That's really cool to me to see.
Yeah. And so with that, we're going to kind of wrap up the section on the other side. And if you guys have any questions while we're kind of doing the last minute announcements and things like that, please feel free to comment. And then we'll have Kai do our parting words for us.
Yeah.
So real quick announcements. Keyforge released yesterday. So Keyforge is a limited deck game.
It's they call themselves a unique deck game.
So how the game works is it's a card game. You spend $10 to buy a deck. That's all you need to spend money on. It is a complete set deck. And what that means is you can't or won't be able to change any of the cards in that deck. It's set as it is. The power is consistent pretty much across the board. So you can walk to a tournament, play it, or you can say, hey, I want to try a new deck out, spend another $10, get a random deck. It's a lot of fun. We are actually getting really low on product. We had a massive amount in.
Yeah, there's only one starter on the shelf. Right? I'm sure there's more in the back.
No, that's it. No? We have one starter left.
One starter and like 2 displays of decks.
Yeah, and so it is going really quick. We'll have Archon decks for a little bit longer, but our starters are almost sold out. So it is first come, first serve for this last starter that we have. So please come into the store, pick it up if you want to get into it. The starter's really nice just because it has the rule book and the, like tokens and things like that. But besides that, all you need to do is buy one of those Archon decks. And we will have more organized play coming out for it soon. Thursdays will be kind of our casual night, and then we'll start structuring events on Saturdays and Sundays for it. With that, speaking of events coming up, next week we will be closed for Thanksgiving. We'll be closed all day, but we will be open at 10 a.m. Black Friday for you guys to come in, do some Christmas shopping, get some deals hopefully, and go from there.
A moment of silence for the Giga Stack.
Yeah, I know. We'll be here. We'll be happy. We'll be well caffeinated, so don't worry. We will be happy to assist you in any which way and form for it. As always, we'll announce more when it gets closer to the actual date. And then finally, on not this Saturday, but next Saturday, we had, I'm not sure if anyone remembered or noticed, but we had tip jars for the month of October with each one of the 4 Harry Potter houses. Ravenclaw ended up winning. And so this next Saturday coming up, we're having a Ravenclaw party. So we are decorating the store. Yeah, we're doing events. So we're going to be doing some very Ravenclaw themed things, like, whether it's tests of intelligence or trivia or whatever. But we'll also be doing a sale on books, battle tomes, and codexes, as obviously the Ravenclaw would want.
Oh yeah,
nice.
We'll be posting more details about that for next Saturday coming up. Nasha was the headmaster of Ravenclaw, so she'll obviously be proctoring the party as a proper Ravenclaw would. So please look forward to that. And so on that note, this month we're currently doing our historicals. We asked the staff what the favorite historicals were for each one, kind of eras or particular settings. So we have samurai, Napoleonics, Romans, and Vikings. So that's the tip for, and that will influence the party coming up in December for it. So yeah, if you guys love David, which you should, start tipping Napoleonics because he needs some love. So that will influence kind of what's going on in the store and all that for December. And then on top of that, we're having more events coming out. We should have some more 40K tournaments coming up. We have the Yeti Bowl for War Machine and Hordes, which is a giant team tournament coming up in mid-December. And we'll be having more details about that coming up. It'll be a fun day. There may even be a Monster Apocalypse tournament attached to it. So, Mompoc fans, we will let you know more about that soon. So yeah, it's getting pretty close to open. I can tell this by people knocking at the door and phone calls ringing. So we're going to wrap this up. So John, do you have anything to add?
I'll talk about a couple of things while you guys do that, and I'll end the stream. But big recap on Warzone Atlanta, and then a couple of new releases like the new Dust stuff.
Right.
So,
any parting words of wisdom before we take off?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks to everyone who listened, and thanks for having me on Giga Rambles. And also, Mondays are the nights we're playing the other side. So make sure to stop by Monday, get a demo, and buy the game when it comes out.
Nice.
So we'll leave it to you to wrap up, John.
Awesome.
Everybody.
Bye.
All right, so Warzone Atlanta was this past weekend. We want to give a huge shout out to the general staff who ran it, headed by Kelly Wallace. It was an awesome weekend, about 119, 120 players throughout the weekend, give or take a couple here or there, but around that amount, pretty much capped out on the amount of tables that they could have. We got to stream 5 games, sponsored by us, Gigabytes Cafe. So got all the equipment down there and streamed everything. So if you want to watch any of those replays, you can see those at, what is the address? It's youtube.com/gigabytestv. You can see John's little dinosaur there on Discord. So it was a great weekend. I enjoyed being there. Got some photographs. The album with the photos will be up on the Warzone Atlanta Facebook page, so you can check that out. I think I'm finishing up the rest of the photos today and tomorrow, so by the end of the weekend, then there'll be a little video of the best painted Papa Joe Baron, who's awesome stuff, non-metallic metal custodies, so it was very cool. A couple of things on the dust stuff. If you can see this, that's the Ninja. Let me get my face out of the way here. It doesn't want to focus on her, but I got to paint that up. I'm going to show that off in a quick little video and photo here on this Facebook page. So that's the new Dust 1947 releases. We also got a video that Mr. Greg Boisbalot made with me, and we made it so that you can see the new Dust releases, the Imperial Japanese Navy. So very cool stuff. Let's see, anything else? Big stuff. Get ready for Black Friday. It's going to be a fun time. So again, that's next Friday, not today, but the next week. Other than that, I think that's everything. So, not everything. There's always more to talk about, right? We'll give some more updates throughout the week. Make sure to check this page. If you don't see notifications from us, make sure to turn that on. That's it. Bye, y'all. Have a great weekend, and see y'all later. Where's my outro? Outro, here we go.